we have before us the opportunity to forge for ourselves and for future generations a new world order.
Good evening, folks. You're listening to the Hour of the Time. I'm William Cooper.
Is against the wall. The chair is against the wall. John has a long mustache. John has a long mustache. It's 12 o'clock, Americans, another day closer to victory. And for all of you out there on or behind the lines, this is your song.
Time, weather, and
Veteran of 3 foreign wars, entrepreneur, and warrior poet, Tony Arterburn takes on the issues facing our country, civilization, and planet. This is the Arterburn radio transmission.
It's good to be back. Finally getting another broadcast out of the bank location in Denison, Texas. We have Wise Wolf Gold, Silver, Bitcoin. This experiment that I've put together. And so far, so good. And the studio's working just fine, it seems. No problems, no issues. Everything is 5x5. So I'm very thankful. I was looking at the headlines. Wow. It reminded me, I don't know why I just keep running this scene through my head. And maybe because of the way what I sleep to, like what I fall asleep to, I'll listen to Will Durant, The Story of Philosophy. And I think the story's in there, but supposedly on his deathbed, Alexander the Great, he was being pressured. He was only 32 years old, almost 33, but he's being pressured by his generals to tell him who takes command, who shall lead. And finally, he just said, he just leaned up and said, to the strongest. And that's the brutal nature of life in many ways. And whether you dress things up, whether you want to pretend them away, there is some brutal realities of the nature of man. And it shows, it bleeds through our headlines. You can either be a misanthrope, and I was corresponding with a good friend of mine. I don't know if I should name him. He's a great thinker. But he sent me this about being misanthropic and disliking people. And sometimes you can have a benign just amusement by it. You look at the headlines, and we'll go to Drudge. And just seems like such a waste. Trump orders nuke test. And the headline on Drudge, how he learned to love the bomb. This is the subtitle of Dr. Strangelove. And the article goes on, and I just go through antiwar.com, but we'll read a few excerpts from NBC. Let me put this up on the screen. This is very important, because this is a departure from, the era of post-Cold War, and especially even during the Cold War, the détente to the 1970s, the SALT Treaty with Nixon, Strategic Arms Limitations Agreement, and even the spirit of what they call détente, which is in an understanding, if you will. And then the Reagan era with Gorbachev, and ended with Reagan in Red Square, walking shoulder to shoulder with Gorbachev, patting him on the back and praying over it. And now we've descended into this thing. By the way, Reagan called the Soviet Union an evil empire one time in the 1980s. I think it was after Brezhnev had died, And they had another premier, and he died. And Reagan said, I'd meet with the Soviet premier, but they keep dying on me. And finally, he got Gorbachev. And that was a man he could deal with. But anyway, Trump orders Pentagon to start testing nuclear weapons on an equal basis with other countries. The U.S. voluntarily halted nuclear weapons explosive testing in 1992, though it has the ability to restart tests at a site in Nevada. This is a treat. This is a real treat. This is a tweet from, or whatever, a truth. So Orwellian from the president of the United States. The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but had no choice. Russia is second and China is a distant third, but will be even in 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Trump said Wednesday he had instructed the Defense Department, which is the War Department. Don't forget that, folks. It's the War Department now. To immediately start testing nuclear weapons on an equal basis. The last confirmed nuclear test by the United States was in 1992 when President George H.W. Bush announced a moratorium on underground nuclear testing. The United States has the ability to resume tests at a federal site in Nevada. Well, what more are you going to learn, really? My grandfather, Nick Davis, was part of the hydrogen bomb experiments in the 1950s, early 1950s, and he lost his life because of it. He was a young Marine. I mean, that's eventually, he lived 70 and almost 70 years old. But that's, he had to live with the cancers that he was constantly fighting off from, in his 40s onward until he died from being part and exposed to the radiation from the hydrogen bomb. And by the way, Oppenheimer, who built the original bomb, was his security clearance was revoked because he didn't want to build the hydrogen bomb. He thought, why would you do that when you have it's like 1,000 times more, some insane number, because it's a different process. Hydrogen bomb is fusion, where the original bomb is fission, splitting the atom. And this is like the collision where you make it just so much more explosive. And why? You can already end all life on Earth. What do you want to do it in a more effective way? I don't know. China's last known testing of a nuclear weapon was in 1996, and Russia's recent weapons testing did not detonate a nuclear weapon, just the delivery technology. Well, if you don't know and you're just, showing up to the headlines and you've not read history and you don't know what happened before you, which is always an interesting comment that I get from people like, well, you weren't around then. I wasn't around during the American Revolution. I wasn't around during the Civil War. I wasn't around during, the Texas independence movement. I wasn't around for the Kennedy assassination or anything, but I know about these things because of scholarship and history and what it's your duty to understand what happened before you. But that's a true statement. A lot of people walk around if they weren't there or didn't pick up the news at that time. It just never happened, and that's what, insanity is, the loss of memory. That's why if you want to destroy people, you sever their roots first. So said Solzhenitsyn. But it's interesting because if you go back, the fight for the Cold War victory, it carried with it a lot of missteps and then also pullbacks. Like, you look at one of the things that Kennedy pushed for was the upper atmospheric test ban, because they were testing nuclear weapons like crazy in the 1950s going into the early 1960s. And one of the things he was able to do after the Cuban Missile Crisis was to get an upper atmospheric testing ban with Khrushchev. So a lot of these tensions were lessened. When you start detonating, they start detonating. And if there's a pullback, then there generally is you just read the last time China detonated one was 96. And then Russia, they just did the delivery device. But we're talking about resuming. By the way, why? Again, what are you going to learn that we don't already know? Do you know that besides Operation Northwoods, one of the things that these are how psychotic some of these people are. In the Defense Department or the apparatus or it always reminds me of Linus, with his security blanket, but the national security blanket, and it's under national security. But they wanted to detonate in the 1950s. The Joint Chiefs of Staff pitched an idea to detonate a nuclear weapon on the moon to show dominance. So you have no regard for human life or this planet, or the fact that detonating nuclear weapons is not great for like a beautiful state like Nevada. Like, why would you be doing it? Let things be. We already know we can blow stuff up. What is this doing? This is ratcheting up tensions. There's a thing called the defense condition, DEFCON. And whenever you screw with stuff like this, you raise DEFCONs, whether you're talking about other countries or not. But we're signaling, because everything is language, we're signaling that we're in an aggressive posture. Regardless of what, some people that read this, like, he's just super strong. He got his nuclear weapons. We have the best nukes. And I don't know that that's true that we have the most. I thought it was the Soviet Union had a massive stockpile. I thought they had more than us, but I could be wrong. It might have been dismantled. Ask about Trump's announcement. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov noted the moratorium on nuclear testing and told reporters, until now, we were not aware that anyone was testing anything. But I want to recall President Putin's statement, which has been repeated many times, that, of course, if someone abandons the moratorium, Russia will act accordingly. It's exactly right. This is a signaling of a change in posture. You start reading between the lines and a lot of this stuff. We were sold a bill of goods, a bill of bads, if you will. In the last election, I was told that the Ukraine war was going to end in 24 hours. I thought this thing was going to be over. And then we got T-shirt man over to the White House and dressed him down. And then he came back again, and now everything is great. And I just read an article on Zero Hedge that we were going to be giving him another $2 billion. Ukraine will receive $2 billion more in weapons in coming months. This is according to Zero Hedge. U.S. ambassador to NATO claims Russia looks very weak right now. And if you don't understand this war or why it happened or any of the geopolitical factors around or how dangerous it is, which most of the mainstream have no clue what I'm talking about, then I guess you don't see how dangerous it is. We're signaling stuff. This is an escalation, folks. And there's no way around it. Nuclear weapons were the sword of Damocles during the Cold War. And that's why no nation that possesses them has ever been invaded. So like Ukraine can't beat Russia because eventually, they can't topple Russia. They can't overturn regime. They can't do that because Russia would eventually retaliate with nuclear weapons, and then it's a toss-up whether or not humanity survives that. So you're screwing with things, you're messing with things that could potentially be a life-ending event, this on the planet, just willy-nilly because of what, ideology, or the fact that you want to continue money laundering in Ukraine, or what is it? There's obviously the Jacobin Bolshevik type ideology of revolution, which is just overthrow any kind of tradition or any sort of regime that links itself to to civilization. I mean, that's the Jacobins. If you look at the French Revolution, were very much, and that's the prototype for the Bolsheviks and the revolutionaries, the Trotskyites of the 20th century, were very much in favor of just turning over anything. They called it the Ancien regime in Paris. You know, that was the name they gave for the royalty. And of course, they beheaded Louis the 16th and his wife, Marie Antoinette. And that was the Ancien regime, but not just that, it was a continuity of tradition. So it's killing that off. And then they got rid of the churches for a while and had the Church of Reason and all that, but they just continue to murder people. That's usually what happens when nature abhors a vacuum. So you create that vacuum, and that's what it's about. It's a destructive force. And they want to take out anything that resembles a nation state. So that's why Russia gets put on the docket, especially by the globalists. So it's a really satanic thing. They have the spirit of war in them. And I look at this, like, well, the options here, and we continue to escalate. We are signaling something. We changed the Department of Defense, the Department of War, which what it was all the way until Truman changed it. I get that. But that was symbolic after we dropped the 2 atomic weapons that Truman was responsible for ordering, on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And one of the reasons he wanted to do that was because it was so destructive. And he was a man who read history. He was a man of conscience. I've read several biographies on Truman. I think that at the end of the day, he realized that, it was in his mind, if he didn't drop the bombs on Japan, that he would have been guilty of, up to 1 million more deaths of that they were estimating it was a minimum of 800,000 lives of Americans and Allied troops to take mainland Japan. For whatever reason, they feel like they needed to take mainland Japan, whatever that was. But he would have been held responsible in not using the technology. So anyway, use the technology. But he also changed the seal on the presidency of the eagle, and the eagles was facing towards the arrows during all the administrations up to his, and he changed it where it was facing the olive branch. So there's little subtle things. And you look at every president was always trying to ratchet stuff down. I mean, even Reagan, like I said, Reagan only called the Soviet Union an evil empire one time. One time. It gets blast out there like he did it all the time. He did it one time. But a little known fact is that he wanted to abolish all nuclear weapons, whether he meant it or not. I haven't heard that from a U.S. president since then. But that was true. I mean, that was something he publicly wanted to end nuclear weapons. And of course, JFK lost his life because of wanting to stop nuclear proliferation, especially to the Israelis, which, it's pretty apparent he got on the wrong side of just about every group, the Israelis being one of them. And they wanted to get their nukes. And they have about 300 atomic weapons. So nuclear proliferation for the Kennedy administration, even Nixon's administration, he had the SALT Treaty. It was all about bringing tensions down in the Cold War. It's what opening of China was for. And then it was a big geopolitical plays. Like this was the grand chessboard, right? Zbigniew Brzezinski, he talked about that. And but what are we doing now? What is this? We're just signaling. This language, folks. Interesting times. We'll talk a little bit about metals today too, and I want to jump into an article over on Natural News, just a little bit of hidden history. We'll talk about some World War II history with Churchill and the CIA that I hadn't read before, so I thought we'd go over that just to cleanse the palate while you careen through the dystopic headlines. All right, let's jump around. I'll go to the chat here in a second. I appreciate all of you being here. All right, let's go to some news on gold. Yeah, gold's been all over the place, up to $4,300 an ounce since I talked to you last, and then down under 4,000. I think we broke 4,000 this morning though, after I was on with David Knight. It's just looking for price discovery, folks. And the Federal Reserve, Jerome Powell, they cut the interest rates by 25 basis points, and not really sure if they're going to do it again in December. They will, though. Okay, they will. And eventually, Jerome Powell will be gone, and this is going to happen. And then all bets are off. You're going to talk about some money printer go burr. So this is all price discovery, and you could have these swings, $200-$300 at a time. Matter of fact, I bought some gold over the weekend and about 7 ounces, but I just locked it in, and I don't think I didn't lose any money, but I didn't make any money because gold dropped, by a couple $100 going into the early AM of Monday. So, that's what happens when you're a gold and silver dealer. When you're a broker, you ride the market. All right, let me put this up on the screen. This is a little article over on Kitco, and we'll talk a little bit about Bitcoin today too. See how many articles I can get through. This is Kitco. Gold's not done. LBMA survey forecast price near 5,000 in 12 months. After significantly underestimating the gold's potential for the last 2 years, market players are playing catch-up with expectations that gold will test resistance just below 5,000 an ounce by this time next year, according to sentiment at the 2025 London Bullion Market Association, the LBMA conference. In a survey conducted during the conference, delegates said they expect gold prices to rise $4,980 an ounce. The LBMA forecast reflects a 25% gain from the current price. The bullish outlook comes as gold has dropped sharply below 4,000 after a wave of selling hit the market record highs above $43.60 an ounce. Last year, delegates expected gold prices to be around $2,941 an ounce. However, prices are more than 1/3 higher than last year's prediction. Gold is seeing its best annual gain since 1979, with prices up more than 50% this year. Well, it's interesting. I talked to David Knight about that this morning. And, 79 was a significant year for both gold and silver, and, gold at 800 or so. And, the next, I think, January of 80 is when you hit 52 plus for an ounce for silver. And it's really interesting because the debt of the U.S. was $1 trillion. And you could see, especially people like the Hunt family that were pushing physical silver and exposing the weakness in the dollar. And they, quietly smashed the Hunt family for their trouble for doing that. So they were sent packing. And then metals were deflated after that because the interest rates were raised to the teens by Paul Volcker, who's head of the Fed. I've talked about this history before, but they papered over everything for a long time. And I just don't think they can do it anymore. I think that's what's being exposed. In 2021, in February of 21, there was the Wall Street Bets crowd and the Reddit raiders. And I remember they had everybody go buy physical silver out of the shops. And my shop, they bought everything. And I was hardly, you were 6 weeks out from getting, even just sovereign regular 1 ounce coins. The next day, the price of silver went down because Wall Street sold off 1.5 times the annual supply in one day of paper and plunged that market. I think with the adoption of nation states like Russia with the strategic reserve asset of silver, China's a buyer right now for weaponry, for electronics, and they're stockpiling. India's doing the same thing. That's those papering over, those times of that happening is past us. And so I think this is all about price discovery now. According to the survey, 40% of participants expect gold to be the top performing asset in the precious metals sector through 2026. Last year, delegates expected silver to lead the market, but few anticipated platinum's robust performance since the summer. That's another good key indicator of things. And I need to talk to Yeka after the broadcast, but I was thinking that when I was talking to David Knight today, I'm going to bring back platinum Platinum's a good play right now. I'm bring back platinum for Wolfpack. We're going to do something in platinum. It's having and I think, again, it's just part of the periodic table. These are things, commodities, rare earth minerals. These are things that are only going to get more valuable. It's because they're scarce resources against an ever expanding fiat currency system. The IMF, the International Monetary Fund, a product of Bretton Woods and the new economic world order of 1944, along with the World Bank, they just came out and said that by 2030, global debt will equal, this is sovereign debt, global debt will equal 100% of global GDP. We call that bankruptcy, folks. That's worldwide, systemic bankruptcy. Because the only way out for them to cover all of the promises and unfunded liabilities, their wars, their welfare, their grift, is to print. And they will continue to do this. So you don't have to be a genius. You don't have to, you're not a seer. You're not an oracle. If you just look at this and go, okay, well, the periodic table's finite, rare earth minerals, commodities, gold, silver, anything that can't be easily produced against, and things that are needed, not, gold, especially for a monetary asset, but silver is an industrial. I mean, I think this, and I will continue to say this, the silver is the best buy, like the physical buy on the planet, because of all the other uses that it has. And the fact that, if you know what I know about the deficits that happen every year, I mean, it's like over a 200 million ounce deficit every year. And the miners aren't pulling it. Now they're finally getting to where they can be profitable pulling it out of the ground, but that takes years. So you're still going to be left with all these deficits before you can even pull it out of the ground. As for silver, 21% of delegates expect it to be the top performing asset next year. Silver prices are projected to climb to $59.10 an ounce by this time next year, a 25% gain from current prices. Well, I agree with that. I think they're probably a little conservative. I think once we broke the $50 mark, it's like this psychological threshold, and I thought that was a good marker. We're going to be going into some really interesting territory with silver. And again, the dollar just continues to lose purchasing power. It's pretty much as simple as that. All right, I'm going to keep burning through the financial headlines, and we're going to go to the chat. Let me put this off the screen. I'm still getting used. I've got my double screens again. Thank God. I got double screens again. I'm still learning this whole setup and what I'm facing. It's interesting, as I was at the house, over in here in Denison, and this has been totally. I got a much bigger desk. I'm very, very happy with it. I'm still getting used to it. All right. Let's pull up this art. I want to talk to you a bit about Bitcoin too. I think there's something interesting going on with that. It's kind of like it's kind of like silver was for years, where it's just quietly getting bought up, and then there's not, the hype around it is like it's kind of quelled. I think it's interesting. Let's put this up on the screen. This is Bitcoin Magazine. But I thought it was interesting for what they attributed this to. Bitcoin price craters to 107,000 as Fed turns cautious. Traders react to the Trump-Xi meeting. Despite some positive news coming out of South Korea, Bitcoin price continued to bleed down to 107,000. Bitcoin price tumbled sharply Thursday morning, falling to a low of 107,000 as traders digested cautious remarks from Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell and mixed signals from the latest Trump-Xi meeting. The Bitcoin price drop erased last week's rebound and extended the Bitcoin's weak October performance, weighed down by macro headwinds and China-U.S. trade relations. The world's largest cryptocurrency was down to 107,472 by early Thursday, according to Bitcoin Magazine Pro data. The move followed the Fed's 25 basis point rate cut on Wednesday, its second of 2025, bringing the target range to 3.75% to 4%. While the rate cut was widely anticipated, Powell's message was clear. Further easing this year is far from guaranteed. There were strongly differing views among policymakers, Powell said during the post-meeting press conference, adding that the Fed might wait a cycle before considering another reduction. That's interesting. So a lot of this is based off of, Powell's remarks and whether they're going to cut again in December. The same thing happened to gold. Like gold pulled back a bit based off the fact that they may not cut, which again, they're going to. Okay. So like this is all short-term stuff, which I think is interesting because if you look at the metrics, like Bitcoin continues to have so much more adoption and there's more and more people buying it, more entities buying it. Bitcoin was traded near 116,000 early this week, sank as Powell spoke, briefly touching 109,000 in a sharp sell-off before stabling near 111,000 overnight. The Fed's tone also overshadowed what appeared to be a positive outcome from the Trump-Xi summit. Following the meeting, President Trump said China would immediately resume soybean purchases, and all rare earth issues have been resolved. Yeah, Powell did confirm the Fed's nearing the end of quantitative tightening QT program, a move that could eventually boost liquidity and risk assets. Well, this is all short-term thinking stuff. And, I was mentioning on the David Knight show today that, Bitcoin hit 100,000 in December of last year. It was December 4th. And I remember because I went on I flew out to Los Angeles and went on the Tinfoil Hat show on the podcast with Sam Tripoli. So before I went live, we started recording, it just hit 100,000 and, it hit all-time high again this last month. But I wanted to bring it to your attention because a lot of these, we're still in an age when, the Fed can move markets and rate cuts and the anticipation of rate cuts or whatever. And there's sell-offs and there's seems like there's less volatility, but this is all volatility. And in these instances, I wouldn't be surprised if you could continue to see more and more of the Bitcoin supply getting bought up because market caps of gold, silver, and Bitcoin are nothing. Yeah, I mentioned earlier what global debt to GDP is going to be 100% in 2030, according to the IMF. You have close to 500 trillion in so-called assets around the world, and Bitcoin's market cap is over 2 trillion. Gold's market cap's 20 trillion. Silver's market cap's about 2 trillion. So out of hundreds of trillions, it's something to be aware of. And I don't think even the price of gold right now is reflecting the uncertainty. The markets hate uncertainty, but it's something for you to pay attention to that I don't even think that we're even near, because it has been papered over. We have not found true price discovery yet. And I think the same is true for Bitcoin. So something to pay attention to. All right, that's your parapolitics and precious metals overview. We'll jump into some other articles and look at some hidden history here. As we, I have at least one more article I want to get to that's before we get to the Churchill bit. Let me go to the chat and make sure I'm put this on the screen. Yeah, thanks for being here. Especially I Rumble, if you want to see us live and always be there. And I don't know if I'll always be over on some of the other technocratic control platforms, but Rumble for sure. Let's see. Steves says, do you like Monero, Tony? I do like Monero. I don't hold a lot of it. I like a lot of those privacy coin technologies. I'm sure I know people. There's a lot of people who've done really well with. I'm not against Monero, but I would, I think I own some. I'm pretty sure I own a little bit of Monero. Sylvia 19 says, enjoying the show, Tony. I appreciate that. I'm just going back through the chat. Thanks everybody for being here. Alexander Harps says Alexander the Great, one of the first globalists, naming all those cities. Alexandria, he had Alexandrias everywhere. Just a kid. Oh yeah, let's go jump over to. I'll make sure I cover everybody on YouTube as well. Harps. I still think Bitcoin will be a case of last man standing. It might be. I could be wrong, by the way. I mean, it's just the metrics of like what makes Bitcoin interesting to me. And again, I've been in it since 2016. I mean, obviously, you guys know. I mean, I'm a gold and silver guy, and that's what I do. And I like metals and I like history and coins. But it's I have an eye to the future. I don't want to be like Peter Schiff. He just writes it off like it's not. It hasn't done this amazing thing so far. In 13 years of whatever of adoption. But I just look at the metrics. I mean, there's talk about a scarce asset. There's more millionaires on Earth than people that own at least $1,200 in Bitcoin. And of all the people on the planet, which it was close to it's over 7 billion now, supposedly. How many people own at least one Bitcoin? And it's only 800 and some odd thousand. Like the metrics are like the scarcity of the asset is insane because you're just talking about, and instead of trillions, you're talking about 21 million. And then how many are lost? About 4 million, 5 million. So you got 16 million that could ever be. So it's the numbers and the continuity of the blockchain that always fascinated me. But I think it's just something that goes along with gold and silver. To me, they flow together. And, I'm not telling you go out and run out and buy it. I'm not telling you go out and run out and buy anything. I had a customer come in yesterday. Well, actually, it wasn't a customer. It was somebody my mother knew. And their 80-year-old father and her mother had got into one of these. They called one of these 1-800 numbers, off Fox News, and put about $500,000 in, and they were trying to cash out. And there's, they should have $1 million because they bought it in 2020 and, prices have doubled. But that's not what happened. And I started looking at the invoices and looking at looking at their stuff. And I said, oh, I see what happened. I see they were just sold a bill of goods. I mean, they just inflated these specific coins or types of rounds. And, can you even sue them for that? I mean, they're just using like pie in the sky numbers. And that will never happen to any of my people because if you got this amount of money, we look at that amount of metals and, as long as everybody wins and we go by market conditions and we usually beat those. And that's why I can go to sleep at night. And it's like, you did well. So I don't tell it in the word investments all over everything. We don't do that because that implies that you're going to be up. Well, I don't know that they're going to be up. I just know that the current monetary system is imploding and they're putting accelerant all over it with 100% tariffs, no tariffs, tariffs for everybody, tariffs for no one. Even Canada, we can't deal with that. Trade negotiations, we got to cut that off. I mean, just stop. This is, and if we were really serious about saving the dollar, it'd be like, we're going to put a moratorium on the corporate income tax for the next 50 years. Or, we're going to make, these are tax-free zones, like these cities, like everything within 100-mile radius of Detroit is now tax-free for a century. So build your business there, create infrastructure, make stuff again. I mean, that's the way you would do it. You'd start bringing things back. Like there would be all the jobs, everything. You would just do the opposite, right? Of what you'd make it safe That's the old phrase, making the world safe for democracy, which was a big sham. No, you just make it safe for, what did Cal Coolidge say? The business of America is business. Turn the thing back on. Turn the engine back on. But that's how you know it's a grift, is because we're not doing any of those things. We're, and you got people celebrating. Well, I like those tariffs. We got revenue. Look, I ran on that when I ran for, I ran on tariffs, which was crazy in 2014, 2013. People thought I was nuts. As a matter of all the conservative talk radio hosts in my radio station were like, that's lib stuff. I remember them telling that to my face. They're like, that's very liberal. You're like a lefty. I'm like, no, I'm a traditionalist. And you just don't understand how history works. I mean, that's my reading of history. But that's not what we're doing here. There's no rhyme. It's just weaponization of the dollar by other means. So that's a long way back to saying, I don't know what the price is going to be. And it's always sad, I'm proud of what Wise Wolf does, and we have a great team, and I'm definitely not running around overselling garbage. So yeah, just know that I'm bringing things to your attention. You decide. Don't listen to anything I say. You do your own research. We're not building a cult here. I don't want a following. Don't even follow me. You're my support group, not my cult. All right, let's go. Let me do this one first. So I'm sure you guys heard this, but this made me think of something. Maybe it's a good book recommendation for you too. Let's look at this. This is about right. Hey, we're gonna start testing nuclear weapons again for whatever apparent reason. But also, according to Zero Hedge, truck that's hauling COVID herpes infected monkeys overturns. An aggressive monkey affected with COVID-19 and other diseases was on the loose in Jasper County, Mississippi on Tuesday after a semi-truck carrying 21 primates overturned while transporting them from Tulane University to an out-of-state testing facility. I think I know where they're going, though. All 20 of the other infected race monkeys were destroyed after the accident, according to the Jasper County Sheriff's Department. We're continuing to look for the one monkey that is still on the loose, the Sheriff's Department reported on Facebook. We have been in contact with the animal disposal company to help handle this situation. The animal disposal company. The monkeys weighed about 40 pounds each. They also carried hepatitis C, herpes, and COVID, but are not infectious, according to authorities. Well, how sad for those monkeys, and I mean that. I don't like animal testing. I read those stories about, the Soviets shot the first dog into space. I just find that to be cruel. Humans, you can decide. You want to get into a can and get shot out into space? Great. But chimps, dogs, just testing on animals of any kind. There has to be a better way. You look at the sickos, and that's who runs stuff, is the murderers like Fauci. Where they put, they had the beagles being eaten alive by, what was it, ants or whatever they had. I mean, just covering them up with vermin until they. I mean, these are sick people. But what this made me think of was the book Dr. Mary's Monkey. And this is an exit from the current dystopic headlines. Let me put this up on the screen. Just a little synopsis of it. But Dr. Mary's Monkey, and I had this in my cabin in the Ozarks. I've read this book, but it's been like 4 years. But it's a book by Edward T. Haslam. It's a gripping true story that uncovers the link between a secret cancer-causing monkey virus and the assassination of JFK. The book begins with the mysterious death of Dr. Mary Sherman, a prominent cancer researcher in New Orleans in 1964. Her body is found burned and mutilated, and the police quickly rule her death as an accidental fire. However, Haslam's investigation reveals a series of shocking revelations, including her involvement in a secret government-funded project to develop a biological weapon using a cancer-causing virus. The book also connects Dr. Sherman to Lee Harvey Oswald, the man accused of assassinating JFK, and suggests that the contaminated polio vaccine trials in New Orleans were linked to the surge in soft tissue cancer. Haslam's work challenges the historical accounts of the JFK assassination and the spread of cancer-causing viruses. Well, not only that, you know, her neighbor was in New Orleans, David Ferry. It's an interesting book, and I forget these things. You know, we forget our history when we're covering so many headlines. So stop and take. I need to do that more because we're covering so much and the pace is moving so fast. We literally are moving at a stupid rate because it's getting so dumb, and we're making all the wrong moves. That's how you know that James Forrestal was right before he got pushed out of a window at Bethesda Naval Hospital. He was the first Secretary of Defense. I wonder if he would be dismayed that we redid it and named it the Department of War. But he said that to McCarthy. You know, if they were simply stupid, every once in a while they'd err in our favor, but they never do. That's how you know it's a plan. All right, last article of the day. Hope you guys are having fun. Last article of the day. Let's get into some hidden history. This is interesting. This is natural news. It explains so much too, because you always get into where the people always invoke Churchill. He's like a deity, like a cult, almost like they do Reagan, but nothing like Churchill. The neocons and all the war, Churchill would never back down. You know, would he be at war for 30 years? He'd be. That's such an insane, idiotic proposal. CIA's secret plot: how they tried to turn Winston Churchill into a Cold War propaganda weapon. This is by Willow Towie over on Natural News. Newly declassified documents reveal a 1958 CIA plan to recruit Winston Churchill for propaganda broadcast on Radio Liberty. The operation aimed to exploit ideological divisions within the Soviet Union to stimulate heretical thinking and undermine Marxism. Churchill, a retired but iconic anti-communist, was one of the many prominent Western figures targeted for his credibility. There is no evidence Churchill participated, and he declined to a related invitation to Washington for health reasons. The revelation highlights the CIA's extensive covert use of media and influential figures during the Cold War. Well, it's interesting. Why didn't they stick to their original charter and continue to do what happened with the CIA that they just went so rogue? Was it Roswell? I mean, because they're born out of the same year. I mean, it's 1947. You get the birth of the national security state, and that's when you get right after that you get national security document NSC 68, which was basically the codifying of what came in 1947, which is the CIA, the NSA, the Air Force, and many other institutions that were born out of 1947, but basically the national security state. What was it that they started? Then they get into, MK Ultra and mind control, and we'll have to cover a lot of what happened with the 1960s and Tom O'Neill's book Chaos, Operation Chaos, and having Jolly and West, and the psychiatrist at the Haight-Ashbury Clinic in the Summer of Love when Charles Manson came in. I mean, there's a reason why all that. You have the 1960s and the psychedelics and Timothy Leary and Gloria Steinem all on the CIA payroll. When did they depart this mission and then go into such weird corners of human behavior? It says, in the shadowy theater of the Cold War, the Central Intelligence Agency sought to weaponize the world's most respected voices against the Soviet Union. Recently declassified documents revealed that in 1958, the agency attempted to recruit one of the West's most iconic leaders, Sir Winston Churchill, to serve as a clandestine propagandist. The plan, orchestrated through the CIA-backed Radio Liberty, aimed to leverage Churchill's formidable reputation to sow dissent and ideological confusion within the USSR, targeting a population largely isolated from Western thought. The proposal to enlist Churchill was part of a broader, sophisticated propaganda apparatus, Radio Liberty, alongside its sister radio station, Radio Free Europe. I think this is where Tucker Carlson's dad, this is where he gets in because of the broadcasting and the radio, if you recall. I'll have to look that up, but I'm pretty sure it was Radio Free America. And that's, it's funny because that's how we eventually won the Cold War, was not because we bombed them or we ratchet up nuclear testing or we obviously did things like SDI. We had the Strategic Defense Initiative, which was called Star Wars, mockingly. But you had a lot of series of summits, and you had, this buildup of weapon. We had that, but there was a difference. There's the posturing of that as opposed to just, hey, we've got some more environmental damage we're going to do. We're going to do a lot more nuclear testing. As opposed to ideas won, really. And of course, the Soviet Union was a construct, a proto-globalist model, kind of like a class project for banksters, because they funded it. That was their baby. Kind of like the Iraq War was their baby. It's their class project. The specific operation targeting Churchill was timed to coincide with the 75th anniversary of Karl Marx's death. CIA analysts had identified a wave of revisionism and unorthodox political thinking within the Soviet Union's intellectual class. The agency saw an opportunity to exploit these with emerging fractures. According to a declassified CIA briefing note, the programming was designed with three explicit objectives: to stimulate heretical thinking by showing Marxism was not a monolithic dogma, to undermine confidence in Marxism core assumptions, and to show that the future did not belong to communism. Well, you get that famous, was it, I had to look and see, what part of Missouri was the Iron Curtain speech? I had to pull it up. Melissa had a great article that she had saved for years that had, when Gorbachev came to Missouri. I had to look that up. Was it Columbia? But it was the site of the Iron Curtain speech, from the from the Adriatic, and the Iron Curtain has been descended across the continent. He did that in the early 50s. And maybe it was 1950. It was early 1950s. And, what's interesting is you had FDR, Churchill, and Stalin, the big three, during World War II. And Stalin and Churchill were close, that's is interesting. Hitler in the Third Reich had a decision to make, whether to turn on the Soviet Union or whether to go into all the colonies, because all the colonies and things of the British Empire were unprotected, especially after Dunkirk and the fall of France. And Churchill was just hoping that he would turn it, on Russia for Lebensraum, for living space. And they did. And that was Operation Barbarossa. So the big three, FDR, especially like the Lend-Lease and all the stuff, the backing of American manufacturing kept the Soviet Union alive. I mean, that was the U.S. State Department, by the way. They didn't even want to get involved in World War II until Hitler attacked the Soviet Union. And then the communism's under attack. Joe McCarthy was right. that's the continuity of the intellectual class in the United States. And you look at somebody like Alger Hiss, who was with FDR in Yalta, was later exposed by Nixon of passing secrets along to the Soviet Union, Whitaker Chambers and all of that, 1946, 47, 48. You had like this exposure of things happened during World War II, but they were all in for communism. So this is like a departure, when Churchill came out and said there's an Iron Curtain descending across the continent. That's what they went to war for. England declared war on the Soviet Union on right after September 1st, 1939, because on Nazi Germany after September 1939, because it's not the other way around. That's what people forget. It was right after the invasion of Poland, and we went to war for Poland because the Third Reich invaded Poland. And then 50 million people plus perished, and like the world got turned upside down, and we dropping atomic weapons and just mass murder on a scale never seen before. And then we give Poland to Stalin. So that's what people call the good war. The attempt to recruit Churchill is not an isolated historical footnote, but part of a documented pattern of CIA media operations. The 1976 Church Committee investigation included the CIA maintained a network of hundreds of foreign individuals who provided intelligence and disseminated covert propaganda with direct access to global news agencies, newspapers, and broadcasters. The committee warned of the inherent potential for manipulating or incidentally misleading the American public and the damage to the credibility and independence of a free press. Well, that's Operation Mockingbird, ladies and gents. Well, I didn't know that they had attempted, of course, that's where Churchill was so effective in, radio. He cut his chops at the BBC. A very, very effective communicator. And interesting, had a massive friendship, very, very deep friendship with Uncle Joe Stalin, right? I'll tell you a quick story before we have to end the transmission. I don't know if I've said it before on air. It's a funny story about, I think they were at Potsdam, and it's Truman, Churchill, and Stalin, and carving up the post-World War II Europe and going over all the intricacies, the machinations, everything. And they stayed up late just drinking. Churchill was a big drinker too, and they just stayed up just getting into some vodka with Stalin. And the next day, Churchill wakes up and cannot remember what he said. Like, what did he give away? What did he do? This is a bad thing. So he writes a letter and has it hand delivered to Stalin. And, Premier Stalin, I interesting conversations last night. I'd love to go over your notes and recap what we talked about. And Stalin sent back a note. I said, "It's okay, Winston. I was drunk too, and the translator's been shot." All right. Gold and silver prices real quick. The price of the yellow metal, $4,000 per troy ounce, 4,000 Luciferian bankster notes and 61 cents. Make a troy ounce of the yellow metal. The silver, $48.82 per ounce on this 30th of October, 2025, $48.82 for the white metal. Bitcoin, 108,032, according to this latest scan. Let's see if it's gone up. No, we're still there. Appreciate each and every one of you. We'll be back next week. I've got some announcements soon on Paratruther. Be sure and follow us on all those channels, Paratruther. And if you are in need of precious metals, wolfpack.gold or wisewolf.gold or anywhere Wise Wolf is found. All the hundreds of websites that we apparently have, you can go there and contact us through there. But we appreciate each and every one. You'll be back next week. From Beans the Brave and everybody here, the crew across Wise Wolf, you guys take care of each other. End of transmission.